Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the webinar. My name is J.R. Gonzalez. I will be your moderator. And today we're going to be talking about the importance of safety in the workplace. I know safety in the workplace isn't one of those sexy type topics that just people flock to, but it's important, especially for the well-being of your own business, insurance purposes, the well-being of your employees, and it can also save you money. You can actually add money to the bottom line of your business. And today, to talk about that, we have Leonard Trinidad. Leonard is with Solve HR out of San Antonio, Texas. Leonard, how are you doing today, sir? Leonard, you are on mute.
Yeah, you always forget the mute thing. I'm doing good, JR. Thanks for having me.
All right, Leonard, thank you very much. And if you can speak up just a little bit louder, Leonard, and can you tell us a little bit about Solve HR before we get started?
Yeah, how's my volume sound?
Volume's down a little bit. If you can talk a little bit louder, it's a little sketchy.
Okay, yeah, I think any louder, I'm going to be yelling in here.
All right, that'll be fine.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks for having me, JR. Again, my name's Leonard Trinidad. I'm the vice president for Solve HR. We're actually headquartered in San Antonio, Texas. We're a PEO, which is a professional employer organization. So what we do is we help out small to medium-sized businesses and some large businesses with outsourcing around payroll, HR, workers' comp, benefit administration. We're currently in 48 different states with our clients. So we're pretty familiar when it comes to handling the issues, especially around safety with any of our clients in any type of situation.
Okay. Well, Leonard, thank you very much. And thank you for being here today. Just for all the listeners and for everybody, this Solve HR is actually going to be providing the information. And this webinar is hosted by, or in part by Tamac in conjunction with Texas Mutual Insurance. Texas Mutual Insurance has been a longtime partner at Tamac. We really appreciate their support and the important things that they do in providing good policies, good safety tips, and insurance to a lot of our members. So with that said, Leonard, do you want to go ahead and get started, and let's just kind of dive into it? And let's talk about the 5 most important, or at least 5 of the things that people can do to make their workplace safer and to increase their bottom line.
Sure, I appreciate it, JR. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I know sometimes these kind of PowerPoints will pop up a little funky, so just let me know if you're seeing it correctly. So do that.
I am seeing it.
How does that look?
Looks good, sir.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so before I start this, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, I am in no way an expert in workplace safety, but what I can tell you is I've been doing this since 2010, and the amount of situations and the clients that I've worked with over the years about workplace safety situations and seeing the workplace safety audits and the OSHA fines has really opened my eyes into the way businesses need to operate. And a lot of times it's not because that they're not trying to operate correctly. A lot of times it's you don't know. Nobody gives you that handbook of how to create a safe workplace and what are the do's and don'ts, and no one really tells you what the fines are going to be until it's too late, or it happens, or you hear a story from somebody else. So we'll touch on 5 things to be considerate of, especially with 2023, regarding OSHA, regarding safety in the workplace. And just like JR mentioned, we're actually a partner of I can't think of their name, the safety organization.
OSHA?
Texas Mutual. I'm with Texas Mutual. So we're actually partners with them as well. And so when it comes to workplace safety and workers' comp, we make sure that we're putting the practices into place to make sure that you guys are protected and have the knowledge that you need. So with that, I'll get started. So the 5 things that we're gonna go over today are around having awareness about what's going on, not only regulatory wise, but also in your place of business, ensuring that you're prepared, what that planning stage looks like, implementing a safety program, and also maintaining that safety program. So to get started, again, awareness, nobody gives you, I mentioned it earlier, nobody gives you that handbook, right? No one gives you that manual of what to do, what not to do. I say this all the time to clients, every year there's either a new governor, a new president, new regulators. new laws that go into place that nobody really knows about or truly can understand. So it's how do I digest that information? How do I stay on top of that so that I can make sure that my business is protected? The biggest change that's going to happen with OSHA this year is called instance by instance citations. So think of it this way: prior to 2023, if OSHA went in there for an investigation, they had to go in and, they pop in and they do a surprise audit. And I'm making up something here, right? They're going into just an office place. Before, if there were electrical cords that were either frayed or not put down properly or not placed under a safety rug, they may give you a $5,000 fine because of the electrical problems. Well, this year now, OSHA is implementing instance by instance citations. So what they will do is they will go around and they will count every single electrical plug that is out of compliance. So if there's 5 electrical compliances that are not in OSHA standards, then it's 5 times the 5,000. So now you've got a $25,000 fine. So it's an instance by instance citation. You have a warehouse, maybe your respirators are out of compliance. It's an instance by instance citation. So there's a fine for every single respirator that's out of compliance versus the old school way of you got a fine for your respirators being out of compliance. So the multiple fines versus one flat fine is something that businesses need to understand, especially when they have multi-location, when they have multiple things, such as in a warehouse. Maybe there's safety lockers that multiple things in those safety lockers need to be in compliance with and labeled with. So it's an instance by instance citation. So being aware of that, knowing that that's what the big push for business and business safety is this year, it's making sure that you're not only are you aware of it, but are you updating your existing safety measures around your business? Do you have that safety manual in place? Are you doing the safety audits? Do you have a trusted safety advisor that can stay on top of those changes and make sure that your logs are updated per regulation? So that's where it comes to being prepared, right? Second bullet point. So as JR mentioned, with workplace safety, this is directly connected to your bottom line. It's a matter of saving money or spending money. So 2 bullet points right here: 40% reduction of costs associated with workplace illness and injury, according to OSHA research, and also a 7% increase in better retention rates. So think about it I know here in San Antonio, we kind of got it to the north. Austin got a little bit more, but think about the freeze that happened, right? You have employees that are out on the roads are icy. Maybe you have a warehouse where it may not be insulated or conditions, up to par. Maybe it's an office building that you have and there's steps that go up to that front door, right? Whenever there's an accident that is on workplace time, that has a direct reflection into your costs of what you're paying for workers' comp. And then also the fines and anything that OSHA could find that is associated with that. So if we could be prepared, if we can make sure that the safety policies and procedures are being taken care of beforehand, it reduces that. The reduction in the injuries, the reductions in the fines, again, have a direct bottom line to what you have to pay out if something were to happen. Most business owners, that's not something that they're accounting for on their income statements, right? I got to pay probably $30,000 in OSHA fines. You hope for that to be zero. So what you have to do is make sure that you are prepared and make sure that if something were to happen, it's either reduced or it doesn't happen in the first place, so that you keep that money and that revenue going for that organization. Also think about what's going on, especially coming up this summer, right? We've had hot summers. A lot of that, when you're thinking about weather, that's a heat hazard recognition. It's understanding not only internal safety concerns for the organization, but also environmental concerns. As your employees are out and about, offices, warehouses, all of that has environmental concerns that you just need to make sure that you are prepared for. So,
Leonard, if I may, before you go on to the next one, I think that's real important for the viewers to understand, is that as you do a job, you budget it, you anticipate, you're you're figuring out your cash flow. The unexpected thing is that those possible OSHA fines, or if somebody were to get hurt or injured. So that definitely could be devastating to a business, any business, and much less a small business. A few of those could actually almost put somebody out of business.
Yeah, and JR, going back to that too, that's one thing that I always mention to business owners as well is when it comes to tax time, those OSHA audits and fines are not something you can write off as a business expense, right? You can write off, the fees for your HR company. You can write off the fees for paying a safety inspector, or you can write these things off, but those penalties and fines and accidents are something that is a direct hit to the bottom line. And like you said, is sometimes for small businesses, the difference between keeping the doors open and closed.
Yeah, I see your point, Leonard, but for a business to actually write it off means they actually have the money. They have to have the money to be able to afford to write it off. So that's a whole other situation. But okay, I understand and thank you for that. But that's definitely something that could really, really adversely affect the well-being of an ongoing business concern. Thank you.
Yeah. So how do you get prepared, right? So being prepared is making sure that you have a plan in place. So there is no law out there that says you have to have a written safety plan. I'll make that very clear. There is no law. If someone comes in, if OSHA comes in and audits you, and if you do not have a safety book or a safety manual in place, you will not be dinged for it. What you will be dinged is not having your OSHA logs updated correctly, making sure that those aren't being filled out, that you don't have the programs in place. If there is respiratory issues there or forklift training, that's where OSHA will ding you. So what's the best solution to get ready for that? And it's developing that plan. That is where a company like us, we recommend making sure that you have a written safety guide. What happens in weather situations where the roads are icy and slick? What happens when there's heat warnings? What happens when the building that you work on is being worked on? And there's electrical concerns or there's construction equipment that's going on. It's easy to think OSHA in terms of workplace safety when you're thinking of blue collar mechanic warehouse stuff, but it accounts for everything. What happens when an employee is walking up to their office and they slip down the stairs? Having those plans in place, knowing what to do if there's a fire in the building, how do we evacuate, what to do if there's an electrical fire, that type of stuff needs to have a plan so an employee knows what to do, how to react if a bad situation does occur. What are the next steps to make sure that we can make sure the rest of the employees stay in a workplace that's safe? How do we evacuate those employees when we can't ensure that safety? And then if an accident were to happen, how do we record that? What do we have to give OSHA? What do we put in the logs? Where do we call? Who do we claim? Those workplace safety logs can become a Bible for your organization because anything and everything can go wrong at different points in your organization. And knock on wood that never happens, but the odds are more than likely something will happen, whether it's an employee just tripping, walking to the restroom, or there is an actual warehouse type of accident. So identify those areas of concern, know where your vulnerabilities are, and that can be done by, again, whether it's somebody that's professionally employed by your organization, or if it's somebody that you outsource to that can go walk your workplace job sites, make recommendations, point out things that you didn't know, and start developing those plans about what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, and making sure feedback is given as things change as well. So you got your plan, you have it written down, right? It's great to have a plan, but if you do nothing about it, it means nothing, right? So the next stage in that is implementing that plan. So it's making sure once you have the safety plan in place, you have the safety manual, whatever it is that the company decides to do, you're getting your employees on board as well. You're training them, you're executing the programs that you develop, whether it's a respiratory program or a cleaning program. I think about a situation before where a company wanted to come on board with us. They did a lot of pallets in the back, and a lot of times they had to cut those pallets down based on the different parts that they were shipping out. And the organization was great, They wanted to come on board with us. We wanted them to come on board. However, when we went through the OSHA inspection before they came on board with us, the biggest thing was that they never cleaned any of that sawdust that was a result of what was being cut. So as the safety inspector went and ran their finger along the rails and along the shelves in the warehouse, all he saw was sawdust. That's a huge fire hazard, right? So even though there was a safety program in place, even though they were wearing, gloves and face masks and respirators, that cleaning process wasn't being implemented with the organization. So they could not come on board with us until that was taken care of, rectified, and employees understood the importance of implementing that in their workplace. So enforcing it, evaluating that safety plan to make sure that everybody's on board. The littlest things can ding a company. So it's making sure that you're not only aware of the situations, but those situations and practices actually do go in place versus just sitting there and having a fancy safety manual that you created for the organization.
Leonard, I've got a quick question for you, and I don't know what category it fits into, and you may or may not be able to answer this, but how about those flyers, those requirements that you're supposed to stick up into a break room or someplace in the office? Who enforces that, and is it really that important to have those things up?
Yeah, so it's the same organization. So OSHA, depending on what the flyer is, we have OSHA, you have Texas Workforce Commission, different organizations that will implement those. You have, depending on what your workplace is, sometimes it's the fire chief that's implementing some of that signage of what needs to be up and what isn't. The one thing I'll tell you, as long as I've been doing it, is they usually change every single year. And if your posters and your signage in your company has been there for a couple of years, more than likely it's probably out of date. So same thing, it's working with that safety organization that can either provide those updated posters like we do for our clients, or sometimes it's just reaching out to those regulatory commissions, and it'll say on the bottom of the poster who it is: OSHA, Texas Work Commission, City of Austin, City of San Antonio, and you can contact them, and those posters normally are free for organizations. All you have to do is send out a request to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So you've understood the safety process. You understand that changes happen. You've gone through, you put a plan in place, you've taken that plan, you started implementing that place, right? The next thing, as I've kind of mentioned through this conversation, is maintaining it, right? So when an accident does happen, why did it happen? Were employees following the safety procedures? Were they not? Did we do ongoing trainings? Was management aware of the situations? Has this been an ongoing issue, right? You really have to take the time to understand why those accidents have happened. And then you have to record it. They have to go into your OSHA logs. You have to report on those because it helps identify patterns, right? Take the fines out of it. What happens if those patterns continue and the situation just becomes worse and worse and worse? It's something you want to recognize. It's something that you want to understand why it took place and to make sure that it never happens again. And it is about making improvements, right? So sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's overwhelming, but it's making those improvements over time. Like I said, there are some things that are, they have to be done by law, but there are some things just to create a better workplace environment, to make your employees happy, to show that you care, to show that you're have their best interest in mind. I don't want to say that can be put by the wayside, right? But sometimes those do take time, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. You're dealing with a lot less, but you have to follow the same laws as a large organization. Again, speak to a professional. What can we do? What needs to be taken care of now? Where am I the most risk at it? And what improvements can I make over the next year, 2, 3 years down the road to ensure that my company, again, is reducing the amount of penalties and fines that it can be exposed to, which again is saving money and putting that into my revenue, into my bottom line again. But at the same time, creating a workplace that employees want to be at, that they're happy to be at, that they know that they're safe at, that we have their best interests in mind, that if something were to happen, they know what to do, how to do, and when to do it. So again, taking those 5 things and understanding exactly where your organization is. Do I reach out to a professional? Do I reach out to a company like Solve HR? Do I just reach out to my local regulatory commission that's going to look over this stuff? Let me understand the changes. Let me understand what I can and can't do. Let me put a plan in place. Let me make sure my employees are on board. And let's make sure we continue to do this. This is ever going. This is part of being a business owner. This is part of running a business. It's making sure year after year that your employees and your organization is taken care of. I mean, some of these companies are your babies. It's something that, again, you don't have a manual for. Don't let an organization affect the revenue, keeping your doors open, and the health and happiness of not only your employees, but yourself as well. Do what you can to make sure that you remain safe and make sure that you have good practices in place for now and in the future if something like that were to arise. So again, and I'll let JR kind of open it up or close it how he wants to, but there is some of my contact information, and JR can also always send it out as well. Again, to have a conversation to see what we can do for you. But again, what I would suggest is, keeping yourself updated. Same thing. I go out there, I look on the OSHA websites, I look at Texas Workforce Commission websites. What's going on? What are the changes? What can I do? And again, maybe I need to employ a professional to help me out with this.
Leonard, thank you very much. And then I know yeah, we have a few minutes left. If somebody wants to put a question into the chat, we can address that. But if not, they also have your email address. Leonard, put up that slide one more time if somebody wants to catch your email address and ask you a question directly. Now, it's also my understanding that, and I really appreciate the fact that you're saying that a lot of these rules and regulations and laws are changing constantly. Aren't we going through some changes right now? If you're on there, you may want to take a screenshot of this. If you've had a chance to write it down, Leonard at solvehr.com. Leonard, thank you. Let's go back to the full screen. And if you could just kind of give us an update of how often some of these laws are changing. Is there anything currently going on that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, so again, I think the biggest change, and there's a lot going on, and I'd be lying if I knew all of them off the top of my head, but the biggest one that everybody's talking about is that instance by instance citation, right? It's taking the workplace citation of violation and multiplying it based on the severity about it. And to be honest with you, it's not I don't want to say it's not a government overreach where they're trying to fine your business as much money as possible to collect tax revenue, right? It's not a conspiracy like that whatsoever. What it is, it's the reinforcement for businesses to understand this is a serious issue. This is something that you need to take care of. It's not just a blanket citation, right? For every instance that's there, that's an instance that can affect every individual employee. So the instance by instance citations are a huge thing to consider because they can be very, very costly for a business. But again, it's a harsh reinforcement by OSHA to make sure that businesses are keeping their employees safe.
Okay. And Leonard, thank you. Very quickly before we go, as we talk about this webinar, one of the things that is essential, and it should be very evident, but if you could just review one more time the importance of, by putting these measures in place, by making sure you have your manuals and put some basic safety procedures, this can actually not only save your company money, but it could help you retain your employees. Yeah,
because especially if you're a CFO or if you're looking at the bottom line revenue for an organization, be it a business owner, just from the outside looking in, there's several things that an organization can do to increase revenue, right? You can, by ensuring that you have the right talent, by ensuring that they stay happy, consolidating vendors, looking at cost of goods served, all that kind of stuff. There's things that can reduce money. Increase profits for an organization. But the last thing that anybody ever truly plans for is the risk, the litigation piece of it, right? No one's prepping themselves for a sexual harassment suit, and no one's prepping that one of their employees is going to fall down the stairs tomorrow. That's the biggest bottom line that most business owners don't plan for. And when it does, it can take a company into the red because of that. And again, it's not a vendor, it's not a service, it's not something that you can write off of. And then not only can that fine cost you money, not only can that workers' comp payout cost you money, but what happens is, as you all know, with workers' comp, there's a workers' comp mod, which is basically your workers' comp rate. For every accident that happens, that modification on your workers' comp rate goes up and up and up. And it's very hard, and you have to establish a great history for that mod to start going down again. So every time there's an incident, every time there's an accident, that modification to your workers' comp rate will increase, and that will affect your business not only for that first year, but for several years until your record becomes clean.
Yeah, when that affects your business, that means you're paying higher prices. Leonard, you brought it up just to dovetail on that. You mentioned the whole sexual harassment. That's one of the things that, from my understanding, the state of Texas is actually making some changes to that you have federal law, and it's a lot of the rule of thumb is if you're a company of 15 or under, you don't have to worry about it. But now I understand the state of Texas has opted to make some changes to that federal regulation, and now it can be up to one employee that you can actually be liable, or at least be have exposure for sexual harassment.
Yeah, so going into that, as a PEO with clients in 48 states, we've always looked at it from the federal level. So we've always tried to advise employees, whether it's a company with 1 employee or 1,000 employees, regarding the risk around things around sexual harassment. So to your point, yes, that is true. That is changing. And then the other big misconception is a lot of times when people think sexual harassment, with a male versus a female. Most of sexual harassment is actually guy on guy sexual harassment, right? I go into work and I joke around with JR. I say something that offended him that time. They pursue it as sexual harassment because of the joke I gave, and then you have a lawsuit. You see it in a lot of blue collar, a lot of warehousing type jobs where people make the off collar joke, and you got a sexual harassment suit. So it's something that has to be considered. It's something that has to be taken care of, and make sure, again, you have the plan, you have the training in place to ensure that if something like that were to happen, you're not hit with an audit, you're not hit with a fine because of things you did or didn't do as a business owner.
Wow. So something as simple as a couple of guys in a break room and an off-color joke could cause a sexual harassment suit.
Hey, look, JR, I'm looking to make a quick buck and stop working for Tamac, right? You make a joke to me.
Hey, dude, you just offended me, okay? You just offended me. You're going to hear from my lawyer. It's getting ridiculous, but okay, those are the laws. Leonard, I want to thank you so much for being here. If you're interested more about that, some of those new laws, especially in the area of sexual harassment, you may want to go to the Tamac website, tamacc.org, or you can go to Latino Business Report, the Tamac podcast. We just completed an episode on that last week, and you have a full about a 20-30 minute episode specifically dealing with that subject. Leonard, once again, thank you very much for being here today. Leonard, Vice President with Solve HR based out of San Antonio, Texas. Latino owned, may I add, and also a sponsor and member of Tamac. We're glad to have you with us. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please feel free to call the office. You got Leonard's email address. Once again, my name is J.R. Gonzalez. I've been moderating this webinar. Thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. Till then, have a great day. Go out there and make some money, guys.